Yup. On the screen, I was king. It's before they cut the wind. Okay, everyone, welcome. You made it to Minocqua, Wisconsin. You made it to the most liberal island in a very MAGA-y place. But the thing is, it's very beautiful here, and when I said in a t-shirt that nobody bought, even the media literate deserve God's country too. So, cheers to being here, and cheers to our beer tasting that I do every Friday and Saturday all summer long. Cheers. Okay, so the Minocqua Brewing Company is it's a marvel that we're even here right now. We've been fighting for our very existence since we put a Biden sign out on our old building about 5 years ago, and the county said that the sign was too big and they'd fine us until we took it down. That was when I knew I was up against something pretty hardcore up here, and unfortunately, I'm not built to fold very easily. So we've been fighting it ever since. What I do on these beer tastings is I sample all of our beers. I talk about some of the political reasons behind them. Sometimes I just crack jokes. Who knows what I'll say? And the more I drink, the more stories I tell. So we're gonna start first with a few things that are not beer, because your palates don't deserve an attack by me right now. So this first one is THC. It is our 8647 top water, and so it's cannabis, it's hemp-derived THC, which is somehow legal in Wisconsin because of a farm bill that was passed a few years ago. Unfortunately, the big, beautiful bill that was passed by Trump made it illegal. And so as of next November, nobody in Wisconsin will be able to sell this. However, if there's a billionaire out there who's involved in the cannabis business, I have a premonition that if he gets to Trump somehow, this will continue to be legal across America. Because all we got to do is pay to play in this country at the moment, and the guys with the most money seemingly get what they want. So I start with this because it's also kind of funny. If you know what 8647 means, right? Yes. James Comey, the FBI director, was thrown. The Department of Justice indicted him for domestic terrorism for simply taking a picture of the term 8647 on a beach. I used to own a brew pub. The term 86 just means we're out of something. 47 is obviously the president. Simply what it means is we'd like to get rid of or be out of our 47th president of the United States. Yeah, I don't think it means anything like we want to snuff out the president of the United States, but we'll talk more about how I was visited by the FBI and the Secret Service later. I still hold on to this, and I'd like to read you the back of the can. It says, "We get it." Oh, by the way, it's 0 alcohol, 0 calories, which suggests something to the label here. It says, "We get it. Your liver is under constant attack. Alcohol is a dictator that takes away your freedom. It distracts while doing its dirty work. It weakens your judicial system and governing bodies. If you give it too much power, you'll never be the same. We have the solution. 8647 THC hop water. Nice. 0 alcohol, 0 calories, tastes like patriotism. 8647 THC hopper water. Liberate your liver. Cheers. By the way, I love that shirt. I wish it was Free Beer Day. That song you heard as we came in was a crazy song that one of our customers in Madison typed in our story, said, "Do it a country way." And all of a sudden, AI generated that song. I don't love AI. None of us should love AI. It's going to ultimately rule us someday. But it was pretty funny as I decided to play it. So the next beer we're gonna drink, or the wine we're gonna drink, we have what's her name? Kayla. Give a hand to Kayla, everyone. She is the one pouring your wine today, and you're a bigger crowd than most times we have. So if somehow or another you're tasting something and I've moved on, that's just the way it's going to be today. It's all free. So I think it's okay, right? So this next one we're going to drink is called Choice Rosé, and it's a rosé of Cabernet Sauvignon. And there's a story behind it because I have partnered up with a winery in Sonoma, California, who makes this wine. And these guys are really good friends of mine right now. The story behind it is that when the Dobbs decision was coming down in the Supreme Court, which made abortion illegal in so many places, or left it to the states, which then in Wisconsin, because we had an 1847 law that made abortion illegal in Wisconsin, made abortion illegal in Wisconsin. The Supreme Court case came down. I created this label called Choice for beer, and it sold terribly. But the label is cool because it has the female sign that stands in place for the H and the O. And if you look, there's a little doily around the O, and that stands for Ruth Bader Ginsburg's collar. So I thought the label was really cool, but the beer sold really terribly. So I found a winery because, believe it or not, and by the way, the Minocqua Brewing Company has about 235,000 followers on Facebook now. And throughout all our socials, we have about 500,000 people, the next largest being Substack. And they tell me that 70% of the people who follow our Facebook page are women over the age of 35, which tells me I'm making the wrong liquid. So I knew I needed to make a wine. I knew I had to serve wine, and obviously pro-choice wine seems to fit the bill for the demographic that I serve. So we made this wine, and it's great, and people love it. And the cool thing about it is it's Equality Vines is co-owned by Jim Obergefell from the Supreme Court case Obergefell v. Hodges, which gave us marriage equality in 2015. So Jim Obergefell was a gay man from Ohio. His partner was dying, and because Ohio's laws were so strict, he wasn't allowed to even visit his partner or sign any of the documents that needed to be signed, or be the power of attorney, or do all the funeral stuff, because he was gay, because they weren't legitimately married. And I think you got to have a heart of absolute stone to think that if somebody loves somebody else, they should be allowed to be with them when they're dying. That's why the Supreme Court case works so well. If you put it in terms of marriage laws, it makes no sense why gay couples can't get married. And so it won. And when it won, Obergefell v. Hodges became the case that gave marriage equality across America. And Equality Vines, if you ever go to Sonoma, California, it's like the gay Mecca. There are married couples who go there just to meet Jim Obergefell, and they weep when they meet him because their whole lives have changed because of this decision. So we are happy to be partnered up with these guys. I asked my fiance, Tracy, to marry me while we were at the vineyards where this wine was being made, because we love it out there. We love visiting those guys. Thanks for Tracy for live streaming this to 500,000 people today as well. Okay. Yay! Okay, so Kayla, let's pour the Mexican lager. Now we're gonna get into beers. So I always start with this one. We call it the Gulf of Mexico. It will and will always be the Gulf of Mexico to me. Yes. The reason we serve this one first is because Mexican lagers are the lightest ones that we make. The reason they're light is because it's made with corn maize, as opposed to barley. I mean, there's barley and there's other grains as well, but the corn maize makes it extremely light, and that is why And that is why. Oh, we're doing out of cans. But that is why it's the first one we do. I want to read you the back of the can because I think you might enjoy it. It's one of my more snarky back of the can things that I've done here. On January 20th, 2025, America's twice impeached convicted felon signed an executive order that changed the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Yes, by forgetting to reserve his only family brain cell that day, our lobotomized swamp donkey of a president unilaterally erased 5 centuries of geographic history. Regardless of what our McDonald's fart-filled blip of a wannabe dictator says, the sane half of America, not the inbred cult of MAGA rock fighters, will always refer to that body of water correctly and with respect to our southern ally. We created the Gulf of Mexico Mexican lager for those in America who still have the courage to stand up to bullies and respect a world order that's held together by a common belief in democratic ideals and the rule of law. Salud! Salud! Come on in, everyone. Join the fun. So, some people say that might be too divisive. In our that rhetoric might be too divisive. I would say that I love Michelle Obama and I love President Obama. When she said, when they go low, we should go high. I used to believe that. And I think in a normal society, when norms of what we were taught when we were growing up still exist, and social media doesn't exist, where people say things behind a keyboard that they don't have to be responsible for, I think that still holds up. Unfortunately, I don't think we live in a world like that anymore. And I think we have to meet people's energy where the energy exists. And so my mantra is to just fight, because we're fighting for our democracy in America. This Mexican lager stands for more than just being snarky. It stands for all the brown-skinned people in America who are migrants, immigrants, or citizens. It doesn't matter to the growing Gestapo that is America, which is called ICE. It doesn't matter if you are brown-skinned, you will be targeted and possibly disappeared into a detention center. And that should scare all of us. Scare absolutely all of us. And let me tell you a little story about how I, to a small degree, identified with what it feels like to worry about being detained. So after I proposed to Tracy over there a couple months ago, we were about 2 bottles of wine in because we were at a vineyard. Why wouldn't you be? Well, we were driving around, and all of a sudden we heard on the radio that there was an assassination attempt at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I listened to that. That's good. There's honks. Sometimes there's things that aren't honks. Sometimes people blow coal straight up into the atmosphere. They know that there's a lot of people here that wouldn't like that. That's why they do it. And sometimes they also give us the finger. And that's why I created another T-shirt that didn't sell all that well. That said, the Minocqua Brewing Company bird. Oh. Okay. No, what is that? By the way, that's the Secret Service and the FBI right there.
This happened yesterday too.
They know what I'm saying. It's mischievous, and somehow I'm just kidding. It doesn't. I don't know why that happens, but it happened yesterday too. And somebody's like, "Dude, they're trying to make sure what you're saying can't be heard." So I made a T-shirt for those guys that go by with this little poll. I said, "The Minocqua Brewing Company Bird Watching Society." Nobody gets it until they see that stuff happening. Okay, so the story is, I said when I heard that there was an assassination attempt at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, I rolled my eyes, and I proceeded to write on Facebook probably something I shouldn't have written because I was kind of 2 bottles of wine in. But I said either a brother or sister in the resistance needs to work on their marksmanship, or, and I really meant the or part. The first part was kind of me just saying stuff. Or Trump faked another assassination attempt to get over a bad news cycle. Who among you thinks the or part is right? Yeah, no kidding. Like everybody thinks that. You know.
I like both.
See what?
I like both, but
I hear you. So, anyways, I woke up the next day, and oh, by the way, Kayla, you can do that in pictures. It might be easier for the stuff, but yeah, that's good. But I woke up the next day, and it had gone viral to the millions of people, in the millions, and unfortunately, but there was a lot of people. Fox News had written to me, and the Daily Mail in London, even, which is like the National Enquirer of London, had written to me. The Blaze, which is this crazy right-wing thing, had written, and they're like, "Are you suggesting that you're a domestic terrorist, that you want to kill the president?" And what I always do when crazy, not real news sources ask me what I'm talking about, I respond in a funny way, screenshot their actual phone number and email address, and put it on blast so you all can fuck with them. Because you should. Because you should. Because they're not real reporters, and all they're meant to do is to sow distrust in our system. And that's what they did to me, but it was wild. And I think there's probably a level at which you're reported to the FBI or the Secret Service that they have to come visit you. So, because I was visited in this very tap room by the Secret Service and the FBI, and they asked me if I wanted to kill the President of the United States. I was like, no. I'd like to punch him in the face a few times. But that experience suggested to me that I could have potentially been removed from my own place of business because I'd said something on Facebook. And I was actually worried that I might end up in a detention center. And we've all heard what these detention centers are like. Many Americans have died in these detention centers already because they're run by corporations who care about more about profits than they do about keeping people healthy and safe in a detention center. Some would call these places concentration camps. Some would. And it's very scary. So I will never say that I have experienced what people with brown skin in America have experienced, but I can empathize based on that one visit, and it horrified me, and I will fight till the end of days to make sure it doesn't happen to other Americans. Okay. The next one is Resistance Pilsner, and I'll move a little bit faster because we got a lot of beers to get through. Resistance Pilsner was never meant to be Resistance Pilsner. It was meant to be called Madam President. And instead of the Statue of Liberty here, we had Kamala Harris that was supported by 4 African Americans who needed to do their thing in history before a black woman could become the president of the United States. One was Rosa Parks. The other was Martin Luther King. The other was Ruby Bridges, who was the first black girl to go to a segregated school in the South. And of course, the other one was Barack Obama, who was the first black president we've had. That was supposed to be this label. And when Trump was elected, not only was I heartbroken, but I also was pissed off because I had already made the beer and made the label. So we quickly turned the tables and we made this in the same design. And so now it's a Statue of Liberty, and she's being protected by the 4 presidents that I think America needed most in our biggest time of trial. That would have been George Washington during the Revolutionary War, Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, Teddy Roosevelt during the first Gilded Age. We are now living in the second Gilded Age. There's no doubt about it, where the oligarchs own everything and all of us are fighting for scraps. And the 4th would be Franklin Roosevelt during World War II. We'd all be speaking German right now if it wasn't for America and the Allies that made sure that Hitler didn't win. So that is the Resistance. This is our new flagship beer that we created as soon as Trump was elected. And we didn't just create that beer, but we sought out allies in Wisconsin who wanted to be part of the resistance happening here in Wisconsin. My first few meetings happened with the the Turners in Milwaukee, who's the oldest socialist organization in Milwaukee. They have a building right across the street from the basketball place, which
Pfizer Forum.
Pfizer Forum. Thank you. You can tell I'm not a huge sports ball fan. I'm more into politics and music. But yeah, so the Turners are right across the street. They're a great organization. They're kind of a conduit to a lot of others. I also met with one of Bernie Sanders' organizers who's since created the Fighting Oligarchy Coalition in Wisconsin, who includes people like Voces de la Frontera, who are at the center of protecting immigrants in Milwaukee and throughout the state of Wisconsin. And we have joined right from the start, and we have moved into more of the independent media space than the boots on the ground, because we're a company and can't make it to the marches all the time. So that's our work for the resistance. But the resistance has been here in Minocqua for a very, very long time. I've had to fight this town to stay open. I've had to fight the county to stay open. And now, believe it or not, I am fighting the state Department of Revenue to stay open. And that is because I have started criticizing the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. And unfortunately, who's from Wisconsin here? Most of you. Okay, we're going to unleash pretty soon, because something happened today that will teach you about the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. Kayla, let's pour the shandy. Okay. So this shandy, by the way, before I talk about the corporate wing of the Democratic Party, there's 4 people on this shandy that you're not going to recognize, because these people all donated $500 to help me launch the Minocqua Marketplace, which is a marketplace that has 120 progressive businesses on it that have promised to never donate to the Trump regime. We are trying to grow that so that you can go there and find everything you need to buy, so you don't have to buy from any companies who have donated to Trump or have helped get America to where it is today. We are donating a portion of those profits to folks who are fighting on the front lines in Minneapolis and Chicago, primarily right now, because that's more of the front lines than in Wisconsin. I'm going to Chicago next week to meet with immigration rights groups and talk about how we can work more together with them. So this website and on this business, I call it the Amazon for progressives, even though it's more like a fuck Trump Etsy right now. It will hopefully become the Amazon for progressives if in fact we need to boycott and strike if Trump steals our elections in November. Now let's talk about the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. The Department of Revenue is trying to shut me down now through bogus tax violations, and I believe it's because I have started criticizing the Democratic Party that, unfortunately, I believe is getting funded by a lot of special interest groups that encourages our fellow Democrats to not stand up for us or stand up for working people, but to care more about those special interests. I would say when you have guys like Zoran Mamdani facing extreme in New York City, facing huge barriers, millions of dollars being spent so he wouldn't get elected because he calls himself a socialist. You got a guy named Dr. El Said in Michigan, whose his opponent is spent $40 million, being funded $40 to $50 million for this U.S. Senate race because he calls himself a democratic socialist. There's groups that are funding the opponents so they won't do anything to help working people, but what they will do is the bidding of the special interests. Now, there's a lot of special interests out there, but unfortunately, the one who has caused so many young people to be disaffected from the Democratic Party is AIPAC, and those that help us fund Israel's crazy wars in the Middle East. If we're sending billions of dollars to Israel, and we're definitely not sending that money so that you can afford health care and that you can afford child care and that we can afford to fund our public schools. I've never had anything against AIPAC or or Israel years ago, but when we are going to all experience these shortages of oil because we got into a war with Iran and we tried to have a ceasefire with Iran and Israel just kept on bombing Lebanon for the hell of it, so we can't have a ceasefire, the Strait of Hormuz won't open. Israel is acting in a way that will cause your groceries bills to go up sky high and your gas bills to go up sky high. That affects domestic stuff in America, and that's why we have to find politicians who care about the working class. And that's why what happened today irritates me. Francesca Hong is running for governor in Wisconsin. She is a Democratic socialist, and she has promised to make life more affordable for Wisconsinites. The word socialist is a boogeyman for a lot of people, but when you hear what they say, it's all about making life more affordable for Wisconsinites. And by the way, Milwaukee is the home of the socialist movement in America. And I would argue that the sewer socialists in Milwaukee made that place a pretty damn good place to live when there were mayors there and the city council there was socialist. The word has been made a boogeyman, but it's not a bad word. Am I a socialist? I don't care. All I care about is making America a place that I remember when I was growing up. What they did today, because the moderate Sarah Rodriguez, backed by the establishment, she was Evers' lieutenant governor. She screwed up her finance report badly. She doesn't have any money to run a campaign. She drops out of the race. Now, instead of simply supporting the other candidates that were in the primary, our Governor Evers made a deal with the Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, who has already dropped out of the race because he's polling in single digits, made a deal to bring him back into the race, specifically to block Francesca Hong from being able to get the Democratic nomination. It's appalling that the Democratic Party is going to work harder to keep out women like Francesca Hong, work harder to keep out people like Zoran Mamdani, work harder to keep out people like Dr. El Sayed than it will to support, than it will to fight against MAGA. That is what our Democratic Party at the rich limousine liberals have become. And it's very scary for me. And that's why when I heard that today, I'm going to fight tooth and nail for Francesca, even though I was once in this race myself. And I said that it was going to be hard for her to win, not because she doesn't believe in the right things, but because she's a woman of color in a state that primarily is primarily white. But now I'm over that. Because we have to vote for the right people, first and foremost. And the right people are not the executive, the Milwaukee County executive who dropped out of the race simply because nobody cared about him. But now somehow we have to back him because our governor says we have to. Let's move on to the next beer, for crying out loud. Talking too much. Freedom Trail Kolsch. This one talks about Franklin Delano Roosevelt. This is part of our Resistance series that we released a year ago. We had a beer for every single president. Some of them have gone by the wayside, but this one stands for the resistance movement during World War II. If you were caught behind enemy lines in Germany, you had to somehow get back to America or back to the Allied forces. And a lot of people would go through Northern Africa all the way over to Casablanca, which is why you see Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman here. And they would go through Casablanca to get to Portugal to get a flight back to America. So it's called the Freedom Trail, and that's why the movie Casablanca is so important in our history, is because it kind of showed the day in the life of people trying to escape the occupied areas of Europe. So that was a resistance movement then. The reason I want to bring this up is because there are three things that are so similar about the Weimar Republic in Germany before the Third Reich with Hitler that are similar to exactly what's happening right now in America. First and foremost, you had judges in Germany who were parts of families who had been aristocracy during World War I. Germany lost that one too, and that used to be Prussia, and they had kings and princes and queens and stuff. So these judges who emerged from Prussia, who had lost World War I, weren't so sure about this fledgling democracy called the Weimar Republic. So when Hitler rose, he was able to convince these judges to use the laws of Germany to subvert the democracy, the fledgling new democracy in Germany, and then become a dictatorship. A month ago, because Mitch McConnell shoved through a lot of corrupt Supreme Court justices, we now have a corrupt Supreme Court who just voted to overturn the Voting Rights Act that we got in the Civil War. They gutted the Voting Rights Act, which means the South is now actively erasing all the majority-minority districts of black folks in the South. That we were able to achieve through the biggest war that America has ever fought, which was the Civil War. Hundreds of thousands of Americans died just so we could get black people the right to vote. They still didn't fix it all after the Civil War, and they finally fixed a lot more of it during the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s. And they at least gave the Voting Rights Act to make sure that these assholes in the South couldn't gerrymander away districts so that black folks didn't have any representation. That's all gone away. Now, I do think that this might backfire. Trump, because he is the all-powerful, told Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, to get rid of all the Democratic districts and gerrymander them all. That's what started these gerrymandering wars, where California responded by passing their own laws to get more Democratic districts, going back and forth and back and forth. America's never seen this, especially in the middle of a decade. It's all corrupt. Unfortunately, there's a lot of Latinos in Texas. And all those districts that were heavy Republican are now less Republicans because they had to spread out all those Republican votes. A lot of Latinos voted for Trump because there's some sort of a patriarchal thing going on there that I don't understand. I will guarantee you there's not a single Latino in America that will vote for Trump now. So I think they overreach in a lot of these areas, and I think their dilution of districts will come back and bite them in the ass, and I don't think all is lost. But it is super worrisome that they are gerrymandering much of the South, and we're going to figure out how this plays out in November if and when we have free and fair elections, which are not necessarily guaranteed. And with that, let's bring out fascist tears. Kayla! Because we got a lot of fascists who are trying to screw with our elections. And we're going to talk about how they're going to try to screw with our elections in a little bit, because you all need to know about this so we can prepare ourselves a little bit for what's going to happen in November. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to Eagle-Eyed Cash Patel and Pete Keg's Breath and what's her name?
Carolyn Levitt.
Here, I'll show you. So our new summer session IPA is made with the fermentable immense of some truly frustrated fascists. Eagle-Eyed Cash Patel, the director of the FBI, gets so drunk that his staff needs to request breaching equipment to rescue him from behind locked doors. Pete Hegseth, who spent millions of your tax dollars renaming the Department of Defense the Department of War, gets regularly punked by his speechwriting staff. Instead of giving him Bible verses to read at Pentagon worship services, they plagiarize quotes from Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt, while attempting to de-Pinocchio herself by getting a nose job, couldn't shake the curse. The cross around her neck now grows larger every time she lies to reporters. Our new IPA will only get better with age, as the impending implosion of American fascism will surely intensify the flavors that these organic tears add to the beer. Cheers.
Cheers.
Fascist Tears IPA. You'll notice on the can that Pete Hegseth's hair is shaped as the emoji of shit. He's also got a few tattoos. One of them reads, I eat boogers. The other reads, douchebag. And that's probably why I'm never going to win when I run for governor of the state of Wisconsin. Sometimes I can't hold it back. You know, sometimes I can't do it. So how? We've already talked about gerrymandering. If you remember, a month ago or so, the FBI raided Georgia. They raided the ballot boxes of Georgia, and now Trump just went on TV yesterday or the day before saying that China was behind this massive way to rig our elections. By the way, Trump was the president during the time that China was supposedly rigging our elections. So if anybody should go to jail because China rigged our elections, it should be the Trump and the regime that were in charge at the time. But when they raided Georgia, and they're also trying to get all of our voter rolls. Republican governors have already handed Trump our voter rolls. Our Democratic governors are fighting against that. The reason this is a problem is that if they get our voter rolls, they simply have to use all the stuff they're using, facial recognition with ICE, to figure out who the Democrats are on those voter rolls. And they simply need to kick them off of their voter rolls. Because if they do that, it's illegal. But you know what Trump is really good at? Causing chaos in the courts and delaying things until it's too late to fix. So if he's got the voter rolls of Americans and he kicks them off, there might not be enough time to go through the courts to get them back on, and those people will be disenfranchised and they will win in districts where they shouldn't win. There's another huge issue called the growing Secret Service, or the growing Gestapo, called ICE. They have been funded to the tune of $70 billion, which is more than the entire Russian army. And it's more than all of the other armed forces are funded. They answer only to Trump. They get 1 month of training. And as you can see, they shoot people in cars without even batting an eye. And these people could be Americans. They could be immigrants. It doesn't matter as long as they have brown skin. So it is completely possible, because Steve Bannon has suggested that is going to happen, that ICE agents come to polling places that are in swing districts or places where they want to tamp down voter turnout, because they're going to come in and they're going to scare the living shit out of people who are going to vote. There's certainly nobody wants their cars to be shot through a window and disappeared or murdered. And if that's happening, I don't know if I want to go vote that day. I certainly would. I've lived a long life. I'm not sure if everybody would. Now, there actually happens to be a really contested district in the state of Wisconsin. And it's our Western District. It's the 3rd district, which includes Stevens Point, Eau Claire, and La Crosse. Those 3 cities make up all the Democrats in that entire district. And it's one of the top 5 swing districts in the country. I wouldn't put it past somebody sending ICE agents to a few areas in Stevens Point, La Crosse, and Eau Claire to intimidate the hell out of the Democratic people who are voting there. There's a lot of old people in Wisconsin, and if I'm a granny who's 65 years old who's voting Democrat, I certainly don't want to face an ICE agent that day. It could come home to roost in November here. And what needs to happen is we need to identify that. You shouldn't get a half-drunk guy at a brewery telling you to worry about this stuff. You need to have the governor of Wisconsin telling you to worry about this stuff. And instead of hiding it, which is what they do, because I called Kelda Royce, I give enough money to Democrats where they answer my phone. I called, she's like, we can't tell people about that because they'll get scared and they won't go vote. Like, are you fucking crazy? We have to tell people about that. so they understand what's in front of them. So they make sure to get to the ballots with as much protection as they can. It upsets me. It upsets me. But we have to focus on this, and we have to have our leaders, who are unfortunately corporate Democrats in Wisconsin, who are not as laser focused on democracy as they should be. We need them to lead right now. Okay, we gotta go to the next tier. Okay, now for some positive stuff. This is called Muckraker Stout, and we're going to talk about muckrakers. So, during the time of Teddy Roosevelt, we had guys like Vanderbilt, Morgan, Rockefeller, and Carnegie, who practically owned everything there was to own in America, and the rest of us, 100 years ago, didn't own anything. Does it sound familiar? We have Bezos, Zuckerberg, Thiel, Ellison, Musk. And the Trumps are working on getting to that next level. They're the oligarchs now who run our country. And we are now in the second Gilded Age. So there's a lot to learn in America about how we got past the first Gilded Age. There's a lot to learn from history. So Teddy Roosevelt was a figurehead at that time, but there were other people. He was the one who voted to get rid of the monopolies 100 years ago, who broke the trusts of Standard Oil, Vanderbilt Railroads. He broke those trusts. But it wasn't him only that did that. It was a group of people called muckrakers that convinced the rest of Americans that they needed to do this. Those muckrakers, there's one called Ida Tarbell, who wrote about labor issues and the plight of the working class in McClure's magazine. She wrote all these articles, exposed all these terrible businesses who are treating their workers like shit. There's also a guy closer to home who wrote The Jungle, and that was Upton Sinclair. Sometimes I have too much to drink and those names elude me. Thank God that didn't happen today. Upton Sinclair wrote The Jungle, and The Jungle's all about Polish immigrants going in Chicago working for meatpacking plants. These Polish immigrants were treated like shit. First of all, the corporations provided the housing for them, and because they focused on profits, they made the housing the shittiest housing possible, which made these places almost uninhabitable because they were drafty and you couldn't live in them in the middle of winter. Second, all these people had to shop at the same grocery store that was provided by the corporation. The meat, they provided Spam in like little cans, but they filled the Spam with sawdust so that they can make more profits on those cans of meat. So there was no nutrition that could be found at these grocery stores. And third, generally, if the father working at the plant got hurt, there was no safety net for him. There was no antibiotics. If he got hurt and he got sick and he died, the entire family starved. And there was no way to help them. He wrote about that in The Jungle. It was absolutely horrible. And it convinced people like us who weren't at the plant, holy shit, we got to do something. We got to change something in America. And so they helped vote for Teddy Roosevelt. They helped vote for the senators and the congressmen who were part of probably what Democratic socialists look like today, who all got together and said, we have to break up these companies because Americans are living in a third world country. And that's exactly what's happening to us right now. We're living in a third world country. Second world. Switzerland's got it way better than us. Sweden's got it way better than us. Norway's got it way better than us. Finland's got it way better than us. They got health care. They got child care. You know, if you get sick, how many people don't want to go to the doctor's office if they get sick because it's going to cost too much for their family? My deductible's through the fucking roof. You know, I'm not going to go for everything because I just don't have enough money to pay for it. So we are living in a time where we have to make change. And the muckrakers did it back then. Who are the muckrakers of today? People like Heather Cox Richardson. People like the Midas Touch, like Cenk Uygur, the Young Turks. Now, weirdly enough, The Minocqua Brewing Company started a Substack page a while ago, and we have consistently, and Substack, by the way, is where a lot of these people exist. Substack and YouTube is called independent media. Why are we having to listen to media on Substack and YouTube as opposed to Channel 9 and Channel 7 and Channel 11? Because Larry Ellison from Oracle is buying up all of our media, and they are replacing world-class journalists with people like Barry Weiss, who canceled 60 Minutes, who has fired people in 60 Minutes and has made CBS unwatchable because it's all state-sponsored lies. You have Elon Musk, who owns Twitter. You can't trust stuff coming from Twitter. You have Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post. You can no longer trust the second most important newspaper in America, because the Washington Post and New York Times were the two that you used to be able to depend on to give you honest journalism. Now you can't depend on one of them anymore. So we no longer have media that we can trust. So now we have to go find it ourselves and hope for the best. Unfortunately, there's a lot of trustworthy people on these independent media stations, Judd Legge, Heather Cox Richardson. But weirdly enough, because we have so many Facebook followers and people that have bought t-shirts from us, I've entered all of your email addresses in the Substack. And we have 165,000 subscribers on Substack who get an email from us every day. Somehow that number is large enough to put us in the top 50 U.S. political Substack pages in the country. So I would call the Minocqua Brewing, and I write on Sundays, and I get people a lot smarter than me to write on other days of the week. Because it's not about me, it's about getting honest political analysis that's not state-sponsored media to as many people as we possibly can. And we do it from a Midwestern lens and a Wisconsin-focused lens. And that simply doesn't exist, because media in Wisconsin is even worse than media throughout the rest of the United States. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel was bought by Gannett a long time ago, and Gannett is known for just killing local newspapers. So anyways, we need muckrakers. We need more muckrakers. That's the path that the Minocqua Brewing Company has taken, and that's why we call it our stout over here. Now, we have one more muckraker that I wanted to do, because everybody in the Midwest eats dinner at like 5:30, which is coming up right now, and I've got you all a little bit liquored up, so I wanted to give you something that wasn't alcoholic, so it'd pick you up so you could coast your way over to dinner. This is called Milkshake Alarm Clock. And when I talk about muckrakers, there's another guy who's become a friend of mine. His name is Steve Hofstetter. Anybody ever heard of this guy before? Yeah. He's a great comedian. He's got way more Facebook, way more Instagram, social media followers, millions. He tours all around America, and he is to comedy as I am to Facebook. He trolls the trolls that come to his comedy shows. We become friends because we're the same mindset. We let them pick on us, and then we hammer down on them and ultimately win later. He's a great Jewish comedian with red hair, and we collaborated to make this blueberry vanilla milkshake oat milk latte, and because he hates coffee and he doesn't drink beer, and so he only likes the frou-frou stuff, and I think it's pretty damn good. So, but the reason I introduced that is he's another muckraker who's doing things his way. And there's so many of us around that are trying to figure out how to navigate America and how to get the truth out to folks. But what I want to leave you is this. There's marching every 3 months for a No Kings March is wonderful. And it's a way for you to get to know activists. But it is the first thing that you have to do, but it can't be the last thing that you do to save American democracy. What you need to do, in addition to marching every 3 months, is to become a poll worker, because they're going to attack our polls. The other thing to do is to run for local office. School boards are being infiltrated by moms. What is it called? Mothers of Liberty. against liberty or something which is anti-gay. They want to burn books in America, and they've populated so many school boards in the state of Wisconsin. They want to destroy public schools so that your kids don't learn how to be media literate. So they won't understand when state-sponsored media is lying to them. So at the very least, nothing happens all with the president, with the U.S. Senate. It happens locally first. And at the very least, you have to be engaged in your local political areas, even in the smallest town. Even if you are surrounded by MAGA, just like we are here, if there's nothing else you learn from today, is you learn that if a small business can survive after being attacked relentlessly by MAGA, you can go home to an all MAGA small town and you can do something to advance the needle to save democracy in America. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Wait. So wait. Yes. She said yes. Thanks a lot. Any questions right away? It's okay if there's no questions.
If you were in Wyoming, I'd vote for you. Wyoming sucks.
I hear you. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're